The religious standards you're holding yourself to are ridiculous and absurd on their face. Let it go and get that dick.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week is our first ever visit to Texas, and our tour guide is the actor, producer, and director Emerson Collins. He's taking us back in time to the Village Station in Dallas, which was the very first gay bar that he ever went to. Though he can't remember the songs he heard that night, what he was wearing, or what performances he saw, he does remember how it felt. The excitement, dread, and anticipation of a better, different future for himself. We talk all about growing up as a Southern Baptist, how to lie convincingly, so if you've ever struggled with that, get some tips from Emerson today, and what it's like being a theater gay. So, Texas. Big hair, oil rigs, lots of racism, and Destiny's Child. What else do I need to know about Texas?
Honestly, at this point, that's it. You've definitely got it. You know, Beyonce and bigots, steers and queers. That is our people. The bigger the hair, the closer to Jesus.
Is that why your hair is cropped quite short?
Correct. I'm getting further and further away from Jesus as I go.
Consciously uncoupling from him, yeah.
Correct. The Southern Baptists I'm not allowed as close as I used to be.
Oh, is it like the 2-meter rule?
Uh-huh.
Was it a 2-meter rule there? Every country seemed to have a different rule.
Ours is 6 feet, which isn't quite 2 meters. You know, it's closer to 7 feet to get 2 meters, but it's the same principle stance.
But you could possibly touch each other if you were stretching.
Yes, if both of us reach out our arms and we're tall enough, you know, we can touch fingertips. Fingertips, as we would say here.
So, like, obviously you don't have much to compare it to, but what is growing up in Texas like?
It's interesting. I actually do have much to compare it to because when I was 16, I moved to Singapore from suburban Houston, Texas, and I finished high school there in Singapore. So there's a dramatic break in my developmental life. So the growing up in Texas part, I learned much more about it once I moved far away from it because I was the skinny kid with glasses and braces who sang in the choir and played in the band and acted in the church pageants. And in Texas, if you don't play football as an adolescent, you weren't really
Hang on. What's a church pageant?
It's a special thing. So if you get to a certain size church, there is usually in the Christmas season a pageant that acts out the Christmas story, the birth of Jesus. So I grew up at a church in Houston that was large enough we did a pageant in December that started rehearsals in August. It did 20 performances that included like 50 sheep, a live camel walking through the church as the three kings bring their gifts to the sweet little baby Jesus, singing hymns, and a 500-voice choir. So wow. Christmas at my house growing up lasted 4 months of the year. That's a pageant.
But they're against homosexuality and flamboyancy.
Here's the thing. They're against homosexuality and they're against flamboyancy in certain circumstances because looking backward, a number of the men who were very involved with the pageant, I think were more than a little bit swishy, but they were just considered artistic. You could be artistic and love Jesus and you sort of got by with it a little bit.
Just channeling all your energy into the camel. Oh, no, I didn't say that.
No. Not bestiality, but, you know, can't love Jesus. What else can you do? But it was sort of the world of like, they refer Friday Night Lights, the idea that, you know, football is king. And if you play you could be the D string, never playing football player growing up. And you are acknowledged, but those of us starring in the school musicals and the band and the choir, like, are basically not a person. So,
and then so the contrast with Singapore.
and then so it was interesting to move somewhere that was not religiously homogenous, was not racially homogenous, was not culturally homogenous. It still had all of the normal adolescent trappings of popularity versus unpopular. But there was a much wider range of reasons people were successful in school. I got cast in the musical when I first moved there my junior year, and people were like, come out with us. You know, who are you? What are you doing here? And it's like, you know, I got cast in the musical, right? But we didn't have a football team. I mean, we did, but it was a soccer team, obviously. And so there was a difference to the hierarchy, and the experience of not having everyone be sort of white, Christian, Southern, religious, gave me a lot of room to flourish and spread my wings, not out of the closet, not yet anywhere near being on that particular journey, but just going to school where like there was no one dominant presentation or background, expanded my own point of view and sort of provided validation to the fact that I had thought there has to be more than this in suburban Houston, Texas. And there is.
So I was going to ask that about like when you grow up in those environments and that's all you've ever known and that's, you know, the norm and that's what's expected of people. Did you have that attitude of like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, is this it? Or were you more like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I don't fit in?
It definitely went back and forth between the two. You know, there's an element of like, this is unfair. The world shouldn't work this way. I mean, you know, and obviously there is some exposure to the wider world.
Because of Melrose Place.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, Melrose Place was definitely a show. I was not allowed to watch at my house, but definitely saw occasionally like with a babysitter, like, ooh, 90210 into Melrose Place on, I think it was Thursday nights, was a very exciting time.
I was just so disappointed that they were like, ooh, we have a gay character in Melrose Place. Ooh. And then he was the most boring, white bread, like no sexuality kind of person. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Well, of course, all across entertainment, funny enough, early entertainment, it's a little bit like a culture. It's like, oh, his big flaw is he's gay. So then everything else about him is like generically bland, vanilla, and boring. You might as well have a rice cake or styrofoam standing there because the whole personality trait was like, no, gay. That's a persona. Didn't you know?
Gay, but non-threatening.
It's just fair. Correct. Gay, but non-sexual. The Ken doll. The like, oh, that cross he has to carry. He's gay. Bless his heart.
Sorry, I took us off field, and I'm really sorry to whoever played that role. I can't even remember who you are. You were that boring.
But it's so funny. I remember like every early gay character. I was definitely the like gay who, if there was a gay character introduced in a television show, I would start watching that show just because there were so few. I remember where I was when I saw Jack's first kiss on Dawson's Creek. I saw every episode of Will and Grace and the first American Queer as Folk. And then even after that, anytime a gay character showed up, I was like, oh, I'm watching this show now, whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in between.
I didn't watch Dawson's Creek, but he was boring as well, wasn't he?
Oh my gosh, yes. It was sort of the same thing. It was the like, oh, he's gay. That's his personality. And of course, as Dawson's Creek sort of invented the teen soap opera genre that I then went on to watch every incarnation of because they were the shows most likely to introduce a gay character. That wasn't suffering in suburban Houston, trying not to play football and be a person. Oh, but back to the other, there was both a like, the world shouldn't work this way, but since it does, oh my gosh, what can I do to like survive and theoretically it's someday thrive within this horribly awful system that I've been born into.
And that's where pageants come into play, or?
I mean, yes and no. That was like, we did them as a family. Me and my entire family were in the pageant.
Oh.
You know, we were all singers. We were all in the thing. But I do attribute that earliest being involved in performing at church as the instigation for my own continuing to pursue performing at school and then beyond. So it probably does all trace back to playing, you know, a little frontier boy in the church pageant.
Frontier boy? What?
The way the church pageant worked, the second act was always the story of Jesus's birth to death, Christmas. Yay. Right. The first act every year had a different theme. So one year it was like Christmas in the future. One year it was Christmas in Texas in the 1860s. And I was a little Daniel Boone kid with a coonskin cap running around the church stage.
Oh, okay. So they didn't like relocate Jerusalem to Middle America.
No, we weren't reinterpreting. It wasn't like how was Jesus born if he'd been born in like Louisiana in New Orleans, like it was an Anne Rice vampire novel or something. No, we didn't. You weren't allowed to take creative liberties with the actual Bible Christmas story.
Well, yeah, well, in some ways is a good thing, but in some ways I would love to hear about those shows. What was Christmas in the Future like?
It was lots of silver lame, lots of like tinsel. It was like silver and purple. You know, that was the color scheme of the future, apparently. And, you know, green laser lights.
I feel like this is the time that I need to tell you that when I was at school, my best friend Sarah and I, we had a favorite book in the school library called Fashion 2000. And it was this book that was made in the 80s. It was like really old. And it had asked fashion designers to like come up with their vision for what we would be wearing in the year 2000.
Yep.
And it was just like off the wall, like bullshit. Basically, everyone was wrapped in tinfoil, but it was amazing. Yes. And like as an adult, I keep looking for this book everywhere.
I'm trying to find it.
I keep going on eBay, like maybe it exists, and it just doesn't exist. I just can't find it.
And you can't find it?
I feel like Sarah and I might have made it up.
That you just invented this entire text that was your plan for the future. I do love that, like, if you look 70s and 80s, anything that was set in like the year 2000 and beyond, it was like, oh, we're not going to use squares or rectangles anymore. There's going to be lots of silver for some reason. And everyone's going to use like a hospital blue lighting.
But we'll all have perms still.
Yeah. Or like weird angled haircuts. Like it's, I love that the future was always just like, I don't know, geometry is going to be big. Like we're going to stop with 90-degree angles. Those are over.
Anyway, so you had this time in Singapore and you kind of realized like, oh, I don't need to live my life in this way that I've been conditioned to think I need to. When did you come back to the States?
So I graduated high school in Singapore and then I came back to Texas, to Waco, Texas, to go to college at Baylor University. It is the world's largest Baptist institution. So listener, if you were thinking that I moved overseas and threw off all the shackles and limitations of my adolescence in Houston, you'd be wrong. I went to college and those religious ones were just as heavy as they had been before we went overseas.
So then what was the thought process?
Of attending Baylor? Like why there after I'd been all over the world? The real honest answer is it was free for academic scholarship. And I thought, well, if I want to be an actor after university, going out into the world to audition for things with $120,000 in student loan debt doesn't seem like a great plan. And Baylor is free, so I will go there. That was the like big motivation.
And so then before going, like what were you thinking? Sorry.
Well,
what were you thinking?
Like, I know this seems like a terrible plan. I really was, you know, for all of the experience that I got internationally and getting to travel all of Asia and how that expanded my worldview in many, many ways. The religious influence of like my own upbringing didn't wane. I went to church in Singapore and all of that. And so it's still very strongly in the Southern Baptist, very religious aspect still existed for me. And I wasn't at that point super tortured about like, oh no, I'm gay yet. You know, it was sort of like all of that got derailed when we moved overseas and I suddenly just got to travel. I was sort of sponging the world that was larger than what I had been in before. And it sort of got set a little bit to the side until I got to college, weirdly, because I considered going to schools in New York. I visited other places, but I ended up back in Waco, Texas, the giant family homestead. My grandparents were there. My parents had gone to school there. My uncle had worked there. And the fact that it was free, and I was like, great, I can make the best of this. And strangely, making my world small again is what gave me the space to start exploring and beginning the steps of confronting that I was a gay man, really a really, really gay man.
Like gay spelled G-H-E-Y, gay.
Like yeah, or with like 7 A's. Like it's really in there. There's just a little extra ones at the end.
And so were you excited to be going to university, or were you like, oh, this is familiar because of all of these elements and like this is just the next thing I'm doing?
No, I really was. I definitely went through school as like the kid who I loved learning. Like I definitely was like the kid that annoyed other kids. I was like, I want to know stuff. I want to know everything about everything. And I think some of that weirdly is tied to the gay conversation because there was an element of like, I want to understand everything about how the world works, about how people work. I want to know everything I can. So I was definitely off to university with a like, I want to know stuff. I would have done probably 4 or 5 majors at the time if I had had the time to get it, to do it. And I think some of that was me unaware of the fact that I was searching for something else that I didn't yet have fully focused in my brain, like what that was. I think I was looking for either an answer, to the conflicts within me, that more understanding of more things might make that easier to deal with or to confront. It was not nearly as conscious as I'm describing it now, but as I look backwards, I think that there was something to my enjoyment of the pursuit of knowledge or whatever that is, that was tied to this, like, I'm uncomfortable with something in myself and trying to understand where and how I fit according to the parameters of the world I live in.
Or distract yourself.
And very much that too. Fill your time with other things. If you're too busy and too exhausted, you don't really notice that like you're not attracted to any of the girls that you're attending these functions with on the weekend. But you're a great date to any theme party.
Especially future parties.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so if we could just do quickly, like Southern Baptism 101, what do I need to know?
Well, part of what you need to know is that Southern Baptists only exist essentially because they were racist. Like once upon a time, there was just like Baptists. And then I believe when the American South and the Civil War, don't quote me on this, y'all can check the Google, but there are parts of like why it originally split off and why the General Baptist Convention of Texas split off that have to do with like the North-South Civil War splits. And I would say that it's the kind of Christianity that definitely focuses on form and public presentation over function. It's not liturgical like Catholicism or Presbyterians, but it's like Sunday socials. And it's very much cultural in the South. There's a lot of like heavy cultural influence of like you go to church on Sunday morning, then you go to lunch at the buffet, then you watch the football game, then you take a nap, and then you get up and go to work on Monday. But it's very pervasive, even if you're not a strong church attendee.
So the teachings aren't all that different, but it's the tribe.
Yes, and exactly. And it's very focused on the teachings that reinforce the existing culture. It's definitely the background of using the Bible sort of as a weapon to wield against those that are different, those that stick out, the clobber verses against homosexuality. And it's that long line of history of, the Bible being used to reinforce slavery, to reinforce racism, to oppose interracial marriage, to oppose homosexuality, to oppose trans people. It's all of that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. And then so being at that university, were those messages kind of reinforced to you, or was that kind of just not brought up that much?
It's interesting because I've thought back, I know some people grew up places where like the anti-homosexuality was definitely loud in their church. I didn't go anywhere where it was that. It was more just understood in the sense that was not acceptable. It's not like I heard sermons all the time preaching about gays going to hell particularly. It was more just pervasively understood that was not acceptable.
Yeah.
And at college, it's not like everybody has to go to church together or anything. So it's more just you end up with a homogenous group of people that all come from the same background. And that just sort of continues. It was not that it was really that different from any other university life. There was just more dogma included in the like highest levels of why the university exists. But there's plenty of people out getting hammered on Saturday night and then rolling in bleary-eyed to a church somewhere on Sunday morning.
Okay. And so then at that university, was there much diversity? I mean, obviously I know what everyone's background was, but did anyone take it as an opportunity to be like, I'm going to be me from now on? And like, did you see any of that?
There was not as much as other universities. I think the like wide demographics of like racial and certainly religious makeup would be smaller than most places. But like in the theater department that I joined very quickly in my sophomore year, we had 2.5 homosexuals And by half, I mean one of my dearest friends in the whole world kept going in and out of the closet through the course of college.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't just that his bottom half was gay.
No, and it was, it's like a mermaid, only the top half. The bottom half is still straight.
Oh, well, that's useless if the bottom half is straight.
Exactly.
I guess you could give blowjobs. So, I mean, that must have been tiring to keep up with.
Yeah, it certainly was. And it was for me. As I got further and further into college, it became more and more sort of undeniable. This part of me definitely wanted to be expressed. Obviously, I wanted to date, to physically connect with people. And it carried so much guilt and shame that I reached a point where I realized, moving sort of dramatically, but I reached the point where the conflict in me was so big and so strong that I was like, I'm either not going to live much longer for the amount of like guilt and shame that I feel about this, or I'm going to accept it. Like, it definitely reached the sort of fork in the road of, this is going to kill me, or I'm going to like deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you weren't one of the 2.5 gays?
Very much not. In fact, one of them, who's still a very good friend, sort of was like, I think you are, just so you know. Like,
hey, Emerson, nice to meet you. By the way, you look pretty gay. Is that how it went?
It wasn't right away, but it was. I definitely remember a night at a party, him being like, I think you're going to get there.
Come to the light.
Yes, very much. And should have been a helpful, because he certainly wasn't saying it in a judgmental way. But I was definitely not prepared at that point. And if anything, it was more terrifying to sort of be seen at a point when I wasn't ready, that made me sort of shunt it aside again a little while longer. But it is this period at Baylor, by the way, where it became very striking, and me really consciously being aware of my own sexuality. And when I was a sophomore, a senior in the theater department who was this extremely attractive, handsome man, who weirdly I in middle school had played in the band with his younger brother, so I'd known who he was long before college, came out of the closet in the theater department. It was a very big deal because he was very socially connected on campus. He was in one of the fraternities. So it was sort of scandalous around the campus that he was dating the head of a fraternity at another university. And so we all, as a group of theater majors, drove from Waco, Texas to Dallas. It's an hour and a half north, to see him perform in drag on the amateur night at the Village Station. So my very first trip to a gay club bar was driving up as a very closeted theater department member to see the hottest guy in our theater department perform in drag at an amateur show at this big gay club.
And at this point, you weren't out.
Nowhere near.
Like, were you like, maybe I am? Or were you just like distracting yourself?
I was still in the phase of like, oh, I probably am, but that's bad and I'm going to go to hell. And so I should work through this and get, quote, better at some point.
And so were you actively doing anything to get better?
I mean, yeah, I mean, sure. I never like attended conversion therapy, like official or anything, but there was lots of like sobbing in my car, praying like, please God, take this away, sort of things happening at this phase.
Why in your car?
Well, because it was like, in college, where else can you like be by yourself? It's like, I've got all these roommates, there's people everywhere else. So it was like either in the car or like wandering the campus at night or something. Those are the choices.
Oh, that's grim. Okay, so then you went to this place. Were you thinking like, oh crap, I don't want to go to a gay bar, it's going to be full of gays? Or were you like curious, or were you just more focused on the performance?
All of the above. I was like thoroughly excited and horrified that everyone would suddenly know that this was a thing I was struggling with. Like when I walked through the door, like that the rainbow detector would go off like over my head, like, fully neon. They'd be like, gay, 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 gay. We see you're a gay, welcome gay.
You get lots of glitter over yourself when that happens.
Yes, and it like never goes away. I'm pretty sure I have glitter on my body somewhere from the first time I ever attended like a gay bar.
Just never disappears.
It doesn't. So I was excited, horrified. I mean, I know that I felt as we drove there, because we have an entire car ride where I have no idea what I said, and I'm sure we filled the air with like musical.
You weren't just
songs.
listening to show tunes, singing along.
Oh no, there was definitely a good bit of that. We did plenty of that. But the combination of excitement and terror, I'm surprised that I didn't throw up on the way to the club, because I can still feel my heart pounding, like walking down the street and up to the door of the bar. And I caused a crisis this first night at a gay bar because I had left my ID an hour and a half back in Waco, Texas.
Oh,
So
shit.
my friend Whitney that I rode with had to go into the club to find our friend Nick, to bring him to the door. For him as now a 6.5-foot woman with giant blonde curls waiting to do his amateur performance, to like scratch the head of the bald doorman to like get me in the door without an ID. And I remember walking through the door, and the way I see it in my mind, there were penises flapping in the air. Now, I have been to this bar literally hundreds of times since then, and I can assure you that a penis has never flapped in the air. In Dallas, Texas, you can't be naked. But I just remember the sense of like everyone I'm seeing identifies as gay, some kind of queer, and feeling that energy in the air.
So this isn't like when a hen party buys a bunch of plastic penises and like throws them around and hangs them from the ceiling. You mean actual penises?
In my mind, like that is not what happened, but like the way it felt at the time, like the awareness that everyone standing in this room is like openly gay, willing to let everyone else here know that they are in this room, felt like Club Babylon from Queer as Folk. It wasn't, but that is this feeling I had walking in of like, I can assume that is a gay person. I can assume that here. Because this was also not an era when there were like tons and tons of straight people or ally identifying people in the room. So it's like just men as far as the eye can see.
And the lesbians by the pool table, right?
Yeah. And working security and bartending. And like, that was still like my favorite lesbian on earth that I met like the next time I went. She was like the downstairs corner well bartender. It's like my first queer out mother figure, so to speak.
So if we could just cycle back quickly.
Yeah.
When you were standing outside waiting for Nick to arrive to then convince the bouncer to let you in, and then when Nick did arrive, like how did you respond?
Well, I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't even know how to process that the like Amazonian woman standing in front of me is like Nick, the hot frat boy that I sort of have a crush on. But there was definitely so much blood pounding in my head that there were not coherent thoughts beyond like, oh God, here we go. This is happening right now. It's happening.
Okay. Did you have like any negative thoughts about what it was to be a drag queen?
No, I didn't. You know, I felt so much internal shame, internal judgment that I never really had time in my life to feel very judgmental about other people, like honestly. And I was sort of like, yeah, for all of the like horrible things I was saying and doing to myself at the time, I never had that feeling about other people the same way. And if I'd had the space to examine that, like the gay choreographer of a show, you know, I didn't think, oh, you're burning in hell, but I definitely think I am. I was too self-involved to have any judgment left for anybody else. No, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this giant like clown figure in front of me, like that's titillating and exciting. And we did go up to see him in the drag show. So we all made it up, our little group of Baylor theater students. And I do remember like dancing along and sort of like turning to my best friend and her being like, I'm not sure I'm okay with this. And I was like, I'm not sure I am either. Like flailing my arms along to the show, but like having the best time of my life.
Okay. And so you were watching the performance, you were like, wow, but also, what else happened in that night? Were there other performances? Did you get on stage?
There were. No, God, no. My fear of like drag queen microphones and spotlights definitely started this night where I was like, oh, please don't come talk to me. Please don't ask me a question. I still vaguely have that sense today, despite the number of drag queens that I know personally and very well. There's still a part of me that's like, please don't talk to me. Please don't include me in your crowd work.
So do you have a tactic to avoid them forcing you to join in?
Yeah, don't sit in the front row. Always sit in the like second person in your group. And never look at them when they're scanning the room.
Oh, see, I think you should look at them. I think you should look them dead in the eye and be like, not me, move on. Because if you look as though you're like, oh, please don't look at me, then they can smell it. They know.
Yeah, you have to do it nonchalantly, though. You have to just sort of happen to be like talking to your friend. Yes, if you're obviously avoiding, but also that like direct eye stare challenge can invite it just as much. They're like, oh.
But not if you like take your finger and you take it across your neck, like you're threatening them.
Every drag queen I know would be, oh, look at you, Mr. Confident. What's your name? What was a weird pantomime play you just did? Did you grow up doing Christmas pageants? So, but it's funny because, you know, with the way memory works, it's so strange because, like, I know other people performed that night, obviously. I mean, we watched a whole show. I don't remember anyone else in the show. I remember Nick and what felt like 80 pounds of Dolly Parton-sized blonde hair as an Amazon woman.
Did he look busted?
No, he looked great. Somebody painted him. It was very he had clearly been going out up there, and someone was like, oh, honey, I'm going to put you in drag for the first time and you can perform on amateur night. No, so he looked good. In my imagination, he was amazing. Now, thinking of all the amateur nights I've seen since, he probably was fine. He wasn't like a dancer or anything. So I'm sure it wasn't like a jaw-dropping performance. He did not continue doing drag after this one fun experience. But in my mind, it was like jaw-dropping for the fearlessness of it all. Mm-hmm. And I've been a huge fan of drag shows ever since. I'm thinking about how much freedom that gave to the sort of swishier, more feminine aspects of my own self. I definitely loved drag for that. The celebration of like people that are truly femme, people that are sometimes, all of the things about me that did not fit the Texas masculinity Marlboro cowboy man is definitely what drew me to drag. That like fearlessness of leaning all the way in, being a gay man. I'm going to fully dress as a woman and I'm going to swish and kick, and all of those things are now strengths. Standing on stage in the spotlight, you know, years and years after having healed the trauma of all that, I know it's still why I love drag so much. It's why I always have.
Mm. And then you watched the performance. When all of the performances were over, did you mingle?
We didn't. I know that like we all were like, yay, you were so great and whatever. And I think we might have danced as a group for a little while, but I don't remember the car ride home at all.
Oh, okay.
The memory of that night is very much in the like arrival, unable to get into the club, seeing him perform. And then no idea. I'm 1 o'clock in the morning driving back to Waco, Texas. I don't remember the conversation. I don't remember any of the elements of the rest of that.
Do you remember what that sparked within you?
That I do, because that was during the fall semester. And then that Christmas, home in Dallas, where my family was, I did lie about going somewhere on a Thursday night so that I could go back to the club by myself. So I drove myself down to park behind the bar and sat in my car for 45 minutes, working up the nerve to walk back into this club that I had been to 3 months before.
And this is the same car that you cried in regularly?
Oh, yeah.
That car's
tear-stained, I know, that tan Altima. And I got into 2 car accidents in the same parking lot on campus in that car. I put that car through it.
Aww.
I mean, by the end of college, it definitely had the same wear and tear that my psyche did. Both of us we're near the expiration of our warranty at that point. But I did, so I drove down, worked up the nerve to get down there, then had to start all the way over working up the nerve just to get out of the car and walk the long block to the street and the long block to the entrance to the club, to get the big black X's on my hand for being under 21 and going into the club. Just as terrified, even more so this time. And with no one with me, none of the sort of armor of friends and, an excuse, I made a beeline up the mirrored hallway to the Rose Room where the drag shows were done, because it was the only space in the building I knew, really. And I had that feeling of, if I stop moving, people are going to know, or I'm going to look like I don't belong, or someone's going to talk to me, and I'm definitely not ready for that. So I ran up the stairs to the back of the Rose Room, hugging up against the big mirror hallway wall to watch the drag show. Lights go down, and I sort of could finally let go of the breath I'd been holding. And as a performer kid, like, watching a show made me feel comfortable. I knew how that part of the evening would work, and it made it sort of okay for my brain to process, like, being here. Mm-hmm. But I was definitely wearing, like, black dress pants and a white button-down shirt.
What kind of shoes?
Definitely, I was probably in just, like, black dress shoes. It was like, I don't have any cute club clothes.
But so hang on, what was the lie you told your parents?
I have no idea. I'm sure at that point, I'm in college. I was the kind of kid growing up where people used me to convince their parents that they could do something. Like, I was so not likely to be doing something that would get in trouble that I was the, like, Emerson's going, so it'll be fine. So that there wasn't really, I could just, I'm going to meet with my roommates from college. We're going out somewhere, whatever. There wasn't a like...
Okay, so you didn't have to come up with an elaborate lie to explain the dress shirt.
No, it was definitely like, we're just going out. We're going to go do something, whatever. This was during the era, though, when you could smoke in clubs.
Oh.
And so coming home at the end of the night, I mean, I did have to say, like, we were going out dancing somewhere, like, who we were going with, because I definitely came home and that, like, everything on you, you know, is soaked with the smell of smoke.
Yeah.
So there was no getting around what kind of activity. So you have to tell a lie that's close enough to the truth that it doesn't get found out in the, like, aftermath.
Lying 101, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so you were just like there up against the wall. Were you like making eye contact with anyone? What was happening?
No. Nope. Nothing. Like, oh, yay, I'm going to watch the show. Please don't talk to me. I'm far enough away. And I can get lost in what's happening up there and sort of like relax for a little while. When the show was over, I finally managed to venture downstairs to stand near enough to the dance floor to see things happening, not brave enough to walk out into it. Finally, after a little while, this guy comes sort of like dancing over, makes eye contact, and I like come out onto the dance floor. And this I viscerally remember because we're dancing, and then he does that thing where like you interlock your legs between each other. So like your thighs are essentially around one of his legs. I can remember the feeling of the pants I was wearing. That this sort of like very first experience of like in front of other people having contact with someone that's like obviously gay. Like if anyone looking can see this is gay. And I remember the like excitement and thrill of that, of like literally just our thighs touching and then your torsos like up close to each other. Like I remember it.
So hang on. So was it that like you were caught in this moment with him, or were you like hyper aware of everything that was going on around you?
It's funny because in that moment, it actually all just lasered in. And I was like, finally managed to sort of crest for that moment. The like, I want to be doing this. Like, this feels very good. This is very exciting. Like, whatever anybody else is seeing. And like, I don't have the energy to notice anyone else anymore. Because now all I'm thinking about is like our thighs touching as we like dance. That he's like holding on to my thigh with his two legs. My whole world has become this like physical touch, because it was the very, very first time ever, like publicly, physically engaging in a way that was definitively gay.
And did it lead to one of my favorite pastimes, which is snogging on the dance floor?
It did not. We got like very close, and then I had to like, oh my gosh, this is like too much and entirely overwhelming, and sort of like, oh, it was so nice to meet you. Okay, bye. I gotta go, and like all but running out of the club. Like it was like, that was really exciting. Oh my gosh, this is too much. I have to go.
Oh. So then at this stage, like a few months has passed since your first time there. Were you more comfortable with the notion that you might be gay, or was it still like,
Yeah, it's not that I was more comfortable with it. It's more that it was more undeniable.
Okay.
The conflict was not particularly less, but like my own like hormones and desires and things are now pushing. It's that weird push-pull of like, oh, wow, I want to do this. Oh, my God, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. You know, it's like the urge fights through, and then the like guilt and shame like lands just as heavy right behind
just after you come. Yeah.
Literally that. The like running and crying, but like you've got a boner still. So like, what is happening? And one other piece I forgot, before I worked up the nerve to go out onto the dance floor, this guy had come up and he was like, hey, you're really cute. Thanks. Oh my gosh, you're talking to me. That's terrifying. We're having this Christmas party. You're young and cute. You should come. This is the address. This is where it'll be. It's later this week.
That was the whole interaction.
Yes. I look back and I think he saw me like so terrified because he was a little bit older. He might have been like late 30s at the time. And I think he probably knew what was happening, because I certainly in the years since have seen people and been like, I know where you are. And good for you. You're like, you're getting there. You're doing it.
Or he was trying to scoop you up before anyone else did.
Or that as well. Like, yes, you're new and terrified and yay. But so he told me about this Christmas party. So after this night of running out of the club, after like that was too much, this sweet man Bill that I danced with for a moment, like a week later, because we're still on Christmas holiday break, comes the night of the Christmas party. And I decide I'm going to go see what's happening with this. So make up some other lie, blah, 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 going to a Christmas party with these people. Doesn't matter. There's no way for anybody to check on it. And so I drive 45 minutes away, like from Dallas halfway to Fort Worth. In Texas, it's a metroplex, but there's like a good distance between them, to like some random house. But I like fully am like headed 20 miles out of town to this house. Same thing. Get to the Christmas party, sit in the car like 2 houses away, trying to like watch like who's going in. Like, am I ridiculous for wanting or for agreeing to go to a party at a house where I literally know no one? I see like a few people straggle in. Nobody looks like a serial killer. Okay, great.
Okay, what does a serial killer look like?
I don't even know. But, you know, it's like that, oh, nobody looks like terrifying and sketchy. You just look like regular people going to a Christmas party.
That's what a serial killer looks like, to be honest.
And that's the problem, is they really do actually look like everyone else.
That's what I found.
But nobody looked overtly, stereotypically terrifying. Just regular homosexuals headed for a homo party. And so, once again, after like an hour of sitting in the car, I only managed to get out of the car by being like, you're an embarrassment if you turn around and drive 45 minutes home. Like if you just wasted an hour and a half and did nothing.
Oh, so wait. So going back to the Southern Baptist 101, shame plays a big role.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Right, but by this point in my life, I'd learned to use shame in the opposite direction as well, right? It's like there's the shame, there's the external shame, and now I'm literally shaming myself into getting out of the car. Like the stereotypical masculine, I could use that against myself as well. Like that, don't be a pussy. That thing that people said in like middle school, that horrible like taunt. So I got out of the car, followed a group of like 3 people into this party. Same thing though, like I'm going to walk in right behind you so that no one stares at me when I walk through the door. Like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And so walk through the door, they sort of went, and I managed to make like a turn far enough away to like no one's staring at me. I'm sort of near the kitchen to like scan the room. And of course, no one's paying attention to me. I laugh at how much time we spend worrying about what other people think of us, when most people are really only worried about themselves for the same reasons or because they're narcissists and they don't care, you know. But it was such a validation that I went to this party, because very quickly into the party, I scan and I see Bill, the guy that I had danced with the week before at the club. So here I'm 45 minutes away at a homo Christmas party, and there he is. The same man. And I was like, well, I don't know what this means, but this seems good. I can talk to you. I sort of know you.
So he wasn't pissed at you for running away then?
No, because it's not like I like ran off the dance floor like Cinderella leaving a glass slipper. We just sort of like, you know, moved on through the dance floor evening, and then I disappeared. Okay. I know there was commentary on like, I lost you that night. Oh yeah, I gotta go. And through our conversation, we discover that he lives back in Dallas, 45-minute drive in the apartment complex that's practically catty corner to my parents' house. So we had both driven the same 20 miles across town to this Christmas party, only to be headed back to the exact same place. So I took that at least as a sign. And we hooked up back at his apartment complex after the ho Christmas party. It was very thrilling and titillating.
Yeah, I imagine so. So you left the party together, I'm assuming, and each got into your cars and then drove back.
Yes.
What were you thinking when you were driving?
Oh my God, 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 oh my God. Like that was definitely as coherent as it got at the time. No, at that point it's, you know, in the shame spiral cycle, we're definitely still like riding a crest of like, oh my gosh, the super hot, cute guy that like danced with me. And there he was at the party, and oh my gosh, this is happening. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. We're now fully into the positive pendulum hormone swing, so that I was not driving back thinking, oh no, I shouldn't do this.
Oh, okay.
We weren't there. We were.
So you weren't like flicking between the 2 options on the way?
Not at that point. At that point, you're definitely into like 20-year-old hormone overdrive. You know, yay, we're doing this. To the point where I parked at his apartment complex. It's of course the middle of the night, and there's nowhere for me to park. So I park in a fire lane. Red paint on the sidewalk where like you can't park so the fire trucks can. And I come out at 2:30 in the morning to go home, and I have a parking ticket from parking in the fire lane in his apartment complex. That the next morning I have to like tap dance to explain to my parents how I got a parking ticket at an apartment complex that's like 100 meters from their house. And I definitely went with some sort of like, I don't know, a friend of Aaron's like lives over there, and we were all hanging out and I wasn't paying attention to the time, and they said it was fine, and
oh, you are good at lying.
No questions were asked.
I believed that.
Well, I always describe it this way. The trick is to always, 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 always tell the truth. So the one time you need to tell a really big lie, everyone believes you. And, you know, it's that old thing of like when people go to tell like lies, it's the details that get you into trouble, right? It's over-explaining. If someone over-explains something to you, that's when you start to go, why are you telling me all of this? Like, I didn't think anything of it until you started making it a thing. I don't know. Maybe my parents knew I was lying and like didn't know why or what about and let it go. I feel like we always see how we presented ourselves as far better than it actually was.
But the truth is you came in smelling like sex and they were like, oh, yeah, let's not ask.
No, we're not walking around my parents' kitchen like mixing sex smell with the eggs and bacon in the air.
Well, okay, so what happened with Bill?
So we hung out a couple of more times that Christmas break at the club, at his apartment, and then I went back, you know, for the spring semester at university, and like we didn't talk anymore. It was like a whirlwind holiday romance and done. And also, but then in my like own cycle, it was like, oh, nope, back to, oops, that was bad. That was a mistake. Back to like focus on school and things and whatever. And it was like, slam that into a vault and put it away.
And not like, oh, I'm not gay. Just like, oh yeah, I am gay, but I should be like doing as little gay activity as I can.
Yes, we're definitely sort of moved into the like, oh, I probably definitely am, but I cannot be. So we've now shifted from like, maybe I won't be, please don't be, into like, oh yeah, but like, no, can't do that, can't choose that.
And so did that involve lots of crying in your car, or were you just kind of like throwing?
I realized that I said crying in my car once, but it wasn't like a daily thing.
Every 2 days? Every 3 days?
No, but probably bi-weekly. But weird, that part of it, like as it became more conscious, and of course the struggle became more apparent, like as I finished university, that aspect of like really front of the mind, sort of self-torture of it all did get stronger towards the end before I like finished and moved out. Because in the summers I worked in theaters here in Dallas. And so that gave the opportunity then to every once in a while also like sneak out and run off to this same club, the Village Station, on a Thursday night to see the drag show on Under 21 night and hang out for a while. But it wasn't until I finished university and actually moved to Dallas that I started like moving sort of actively into like coming out of the closet. There just was not the space for it at university.
And so this was like this was immediately after university.
So after university, I moved to Dallas to work in theater, auditioning for shows. And whereas I laugh thinking like, of course people should have known, but in the world I grew up in, that Southern Baptist world, no one thought that people were gay. Lots of people did not know a gay person. So it took people that were in the arts or that had grown up other places to be like, you might be, in the way that many other people right after college just assumed, because that's sort of what happened. No one expected it at college. And then right after I started working in theater and I'm in the ensemble of musicals and someone was like, we're all going to the Village Station. You want to come? The opposite happened. The sort of nonchalant assumption that I was gay started happening. And that's sort of what gave me the first space to sort of like examine what it would feel like for me to be out and open. So it wasn't that even that I came out to people. It was that like, oh, it didn't occur to them that I wasn't. Because suddenly I'm in a world of like adults who do theater all the time. And there are lots of like openly gay men in and around the world and the ensembles and things I'm doing. So there was just a like, oh, you too, right? That sort of thing.
So do you then remember the first time that someone assumed you were gay and spoke to you as though you were?
Yes, I do. Because it was like terrifying. And I like wanted to correct it. And then I also knew I would be sort of a hypocrite for correcting it. And so I definitely just sort of let it run by. It was like I was doing a show, the Garland Summer Musicals, I remember. And this I say older, I'm sure he was maybe at most 40 at the time, guy in the show was like, some conversation about people being gay. And he was like, well, I mean, we don't even have a straight guy in this ensemble, kind of comment was made. So I was just included in the group. It wasn't a like pointed at me. And I felt the like, I'm not, I felt that come up, the instinctual need to distance myself from that. And then I also remember, if I just let that go, like, what does that feel like? And I didn't say anything. And I remember that feeling like coming out, like the world has shifted on its axis, that I let you just think that about me. And of course, everybody else is just continuing on with the conversation. But I feel like, oh my gosh, I've just like come out to everyone here essentially. Oh God, oh God, oh God. But like, okay, I didn't get struck by lightning. The world didn't end. And then started going out with them. And so it was like, by assumption, I was just included in the like being out group. And that was sort of the first time. Then I went with those guys back to the village station, to this club that I'd been secretly going to now for 2 years on my own. And have had for the first time the experience of being out with people and all of us knowing that about each other. And like, oh, we're just a group of gays having fun on the town together. That was probably my first, like, not, shame-filled, oh, I'm like getting away with something or hiding something. I'm like, well, we're just here and just having a great time. And look at us being like silly homos, like dancing the night away. Same thing, still into the drag show because I love it. Still my favorite thing. But the beginning of existing post-university as a like out adult. And so there was a big break in my life between the people I knew at university, the people I hung out with there, and this new like adult professional theater world where I left one without coming out to anybody but like my best friend. And then suddenly in this new one, I'm just out because that's who I am. So I didn't personally actually come out like saying the words I'm gay to very many people in an informative way. It just became like included in the new world and life that I had.
Did you exert a lot of energy in trying to keep those different parts of your life separate?
Yes and no. What I sort of just let happen, there's that normal thing that happens post-university where like these people you see every single day for 4 years, basically, graduation happens and then you scatter to the four corners of the world. And then like suddenly you're not seeing any of those people. Everybody moves to wherever they're moving. I just did not make an effort to stay in contact with the people I knew from Baylor that also were in Dallas. I had the like, oh, I'm too busy, I'm doing a show, whatever. So I sort of started building a new life. It's not that I cut off the old one, I just didn't maintain it. And so the natural devolution that happens happened more aggressively for me than other people. So there's sort of a big giant break in my life, kind of like the calendar, before gay and after gay. And very few people like made it from one to the other.
BG
I mean, really.
BG.
BGAG.
BG. Is that how the Bee Gees got their name?
I'm pretty sure, like before gay.
Yeah. And then, but what about your family then? Like, were you trying to did you tell them?
Not for a while. I finally did when I had my first boyfriend 2 years into the like being in Dallas. I was the typical like post-collegiate person. I want to be an adult, but I'm living at home to save money. But also, you can't tell me what to do or what time to be home. Like the normal post-adolescent parent-child conflicts, it wasn't like gay specific. It was more just like, you can't, tell me what time I have to be back here. And so then I finally like started that coming out process once I had my first boyfriend. Because it was like, oh, well, now you sort of need to know. Because now I'm going to go start, like, I'm spending the night at this like same person's house over and over. So.
And how did it go?
That went fine. But like I've sort of always said that like the theological, religious specific things were challenging for us to work through. But unlike many people, I never had a question about the fact that my parents loved me unconditionally. So the academic arguments were tough, but I did not have any of the like the screaming, rejection, all of those things that so many people experience. And so I feel very fortunate about that. My own self-shame and judgment was my own perspective on like the religion and things that I thought I was supposed to do correctly. It wasn't a fear of like my parents, the way it is for many with heavy religious influence.
Yeah, sure. But so then how did you work through all of that theologic? The religious bit.
But so I kept building my like big new out life and enjoying the like being a early mid-20s homo on the town, because I had just passed the point of, honestly, there was an element of like, I'm either going to like kill myself to get to God to get the answers to these questions that I've had for so many years, or I'm going to like acknowledge and admit that this is who I am and let the chips fall where they may. So I finally, early 20s, started living openly and with somewhat of an abandon. And it was the world of like doing all of theater and being with so many people that was different than the like conservative culture of my school and college that gave me the space to do that. And it all came to a head, speaking of the theological implications. The Uptown Players is a theater company, a gay-focused, LGBT-theme-focused theater company in Dallas, and they were doing a production of a play called Southern Baptist Sissies, written by Del Shores. He's the creator of a big gay Southern franchise called Sordid Lives. And I auditioned for this play, knowing that literally the title, I was like, I have to read this. I mean, it's my own life experience in the title of the play, being like a gay growing up in the Southern Baptist Church. He was the son of a Southern Baptist preacher, and he had written this play about 4 boys growing up in the Southern Baptist Church who are all gay and how they respond to it. One of them grows up to be a drag queen. The sort of thinker, angsty writer is the narrator. One of them ends his life, and one of them tries to be straight and marries a woman. And so all of my own personal life development issues, my theological concerns, my starting to live as an out gay man, all came to a head in choosing and then getting cast in this play. Because literally my own internal issues were in the text of the play. I got cast as the drag queen character. I was terrified and excited. Drag from the Village Station being my very first love of like big gay public performance. And I got the thigh-high hooker boots for the Shania Twain number that I would need to perform in the middle of the show in drag, walked up and down the street in front of the theater learning to walk in the heels, and leading to this giant, like, sort of personal catharsis that was the actual production of this play. As an advertisement for the play, we went and performed one of my drag numbers on the stage at the Rose Room at the Village Station, where I had watched all of these queens perform. So it was a big, like, full circle standing in my sort of own gay power, so to speak. And as an actor, I'd played all these male ingenue roles. I'd done all these like small, wide-eyed boys in theater shows. So the like artistic risk, the personal risk, the sort of loudly proclaiming who I am that doing this play did, it was sort of a pinnacle of my personal development in many, many ways. Looking backwards, there was this giant moment sort of in my life in doing this play where I said, fuck it, I'm moving forward. You know, this is who I am. It is who I am. It is who I will be, who I will continue to be. And like doing the show was sort of the final like planting of the flagget, if you will, in my life to be like, yeah, this is undeniably, unequivocally, even finally proudly me. And so in it, I got to go back and perform at the same club I'd watched all those girls perform at. And the personal bravery, what it took for me to like do that play and know that all of my friends from college and people would see the title of the play on Facebook and various things, also led to like how I moved to Los Angeles. So, you know, sometimes confronting our big, giant, terrifying internal demons is rewarded. And mine was legitimately directly rewarded as a result of doing this play.
And so all of those questions were questions that you asked yourself, like, you know, will people find out about this? What are they going to think? How am I going to navigate that?
Yeah. But also, and then I reached the, like, I don't have to care. I don't have to worry about it anymore. You know, I didn't come out to any of those people particularly. I came out to 2 of my closest roommates from college. Right after I moved to Los Angeles, I came home for Christmas, and I came out to both of them at one of their weddings, like my 2 freshman year roommates. Like, we're sitting in the wedding, waiting for the wedding to start, and I'm sitting next to one of them.
I'm going to make this about me.
Literally, I was like, if I, like paint the picture of, like, the narcissistic coming out journey. Because we're sitting there waiting, and there's a little bit of quiet. He turns to me and is like, it's really quiet. And I was like, would this be a great time to tell everyone I'm gay? And he definitely did that, like, guffaw laugh and then, like, cover your mouth. And he was like, oh, my God, yes, please do. Please do. But literally, that's how I came out to him. It was like sitting waiting for our other roommate friend to get married. And then at the end of the night...
Oh, so you didn't wait until the does anyone have any objections bit?
I didn't do it as an objection or as a toast. So I feel like it was like reasonably only partially did I make it about me. But then I felt bad because the other one who I dearly loved, I was like, well, I came out to one of them. And so it's like the end of the night, reception, everyone's like dancing and I have to leave so I can drive back to Dallas to get on a plane to go back to LA. And like, we're literally dancing goodbye. And I was like, by the way, I came out to Finna and like before the ceremony started. And I know it's weird to say it at your wedding day, but I'm gay and I didn't want to like leave without telling you. So bye. And I talked to him recently and he and his wife, who I know and love very, very much as well, they still laugh about it. He said we still like bring it up and laugh that it's like our like wedding reception. You're like, by the way, I'm gay, bye. It's like, I'm glad you laugh at it instead of saying thank you for making your reception about your like own personal tragedy, this 3-act play that you've like written for your. And again, it's back to that nobody cares. I mean, I'm sure there's some judgmental bigots from my past, but I've also learned there are a number of people who have said over the years, I wish you'd given me the room to be better than you expected me to be, you know, to be more accepting, to be more understanding. And I've tried to explain to them that my own personal trauma with it was so large that I didn't have the space to hope that they would be good. Because if they weren't, I would have like tainted the memory of them in my life. So it was easier to just sort of leave them back in that other era and move on, which is sad.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. Like, you know, when I came out, I was just like at that part of my life where I was like, fuck you all, I'm gonna be like that. And so I guess my perspective was, well, I don't need you in my life anyway if you're gonna have a problem with this. So it's interesting to hear your perspective that like you wanted to cherish their memory.
Well, it's like yours is honestly the healthier way. It's like, it's much better. It's the way I've encouraged people now. Because what's interesting about my own journey. So this play, Southern Baptist Sissies, working with Dell, we made Southern Baptist Sissies as a movie in 2012, years later in my story. But so because of that, I still get like DMs and letters all the time from people still living in this sort of world saying, I felt seen in that. Because for all of our advancement, for all of our like equality movements, there are still many, many places, of course, we know, where if not legally, certainly culturally, there is still a lot of pressure to not be. And the fact that so many people are out and visible can make those people feel even further disconnected from us. So I get letters from people saying, I really relate to that piece. And I think for me, I didn't have space to even go yet to be like, accept me or fuck you, which is correct because this is just who we are.
I should get t-shirts with that.
Yes, you should. Sell merch. I want Lost Spaces merch. But for me, I think I just got to the place of like, I was relieved that I no longer felt those things about myself. So mine was more of a, I don't care what you think, because it took so long for me to let go of my own, the judgment I put into me. It was much longer before I even like bothered to care if anybody had judged. Like my sense of relief of self-acceptance was so large that it sort of washed over everything. And it was like, I'm busy. I'm looking forward. The things I want to do, I'm finally getting to do them. I'm focusing on that and on, doing shows and like pursuing being an actress. Spoiler alert, is not easy. So I had plenty of things to take up my time. And I did. I was sort of like, whatever y'all think back there, I don't see it. I don't hear it. I don't have to know. I don't have to care. Like, I'm sure that it went around. I look back now and think, I wonder what it was like as people like discussed it randomly. But I don't know, and I don't care.
So with that in mind, if you could cast your mind back, let's say you've been transported back in time and you happen to be planted outside the club on the night that you first went there, and you run into your teenage self. What advice would you give?
It's so funny. There's like, as you can tell, I'm prone to Hallmark card fortune cookie type platitudes because my torture was so much. And so I honestly think that all I could say that would matter at that point is like, breathe, baby, breathe. Yeah, I think that I would be like the sweet middle-aged queen going, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Like, let it go. But I don't think there's anything else I could have said that at the time would have meant anything. If I'm being really honest. Like, I'd love to say that if I had said right then, like, the religious standards you're holding yourself to are ridiculous and absurd on their face. Let it go and get that dick. But I wouldn't have been able to hear that either.
I mean, I think that's pretty good advice.
Yes. Honestly, what I would say is if you would give yourself the grace you give other people, this will not be so hard for you. you know. So I look back at how much I wasn't bothered by other people, that I didn't look at people with the judgment that I was so afraid of. That, yeah, if I'd just been willing to give myself the same room to like screw up, and that it would have been so much easier. But all of my work's been informed by the trauma I personally experienced. So, you know, I've made good things out of it as well.
Do you have any memories of the Village Station or of your own queer scene that you want to share? Well, if you do, I would love to hear all about it, so get in touch. Find me on www.lostspacespodcast.com. Go to the section Share a Lost Space and tell me all about your scene, the memories that you had there, and what you got up to. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My handle is @LostSpacesPod. Find out more about Emerson at his website, emersoncollins.com, and follow him on Instagram. His handle there is Emerson Collins, and Twitter, his handle is actually Emerson. I'll make sure these are all in the show notes. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I have been writing songs about queer venues and the memories that they have left behind, and I'm going to be releasing songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single, which is called Well Groomed Boys, and is also playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you like this episode, I would really appreciate if you helped to spread the word. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts, tell people, share it with someone who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen to. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.